Hi, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non Muslims to handle Islam in the 21st century. My name is Mustafa, and this is my co host in the nick of time. If you wish to talk about Islam, the ideology, you have come to the right place. We cover current Islamic news, Islamic scripture, some crazy comments, and a weekly topic about Islam to examine, critique, and analyze. If this is not enough Islam for you, please drop by our Discord to discuss any further questions about Islam. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. However, we do embrace free speech and criticism if it's factual and correct. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
Good evening, everybody. One second, one second. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. My name is Mustafa, and my co host Nick is missing at the moment. The reason being is that there was a bad storm last night in southern Ontario, Canada. So, yes, we have Canadian problems, unfortunately. And here we are joined by a very well mannered, very well cultured, coming to your nightmares, telling you that everything's complex and complicated. The cultured Ginny, and he will come into your nightmares, telling you history is complicated. Also, Ginny, can you hear me?
It always is.
Yeah. But yes, thank you for joining me today. I today what we're doing, and Nick actually couldn't join us because his friend is in an accident from a storm last night, and so he's in the hospital right now.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I nearly got into something because like it was so slippery just getting home. And the storm came in at a very unexpected time. And this is like practically the fourth storm we're getting just within this month. So it's quite like quite Mother Nature has been quite unpredictable this month, even though I don't believe in a Mother Nature, but this one's kind of like bipolar, so to speak, at least in Canada. But yes, he wanted me to cover today's topic, which is India, mostly pre-Islamic India, that is. And he sent me his research because he couldn't make it. And this is the India prior to Muhammad bin Qasim. This is India prior to the Umayyad interactions or the Rashidun interactions or Muawiyah. So this is India, very very old India, and the history really extends really far back. So I apologize if I do sound a bit boring, and because the timing is if
Yeah, the Indus civilization is one of the oldest
yes.
civilizations there is.
Exactly. So there have been some very old settlements. So let me just present. Uh, he shared a presentation with me that he had prepped, which is we weren't sure if we were going to cover part one. Whoops, I think I'm on the wrong slide. Whoops, wrong slide. 1 second. Go back. Up. Right. So I went a little, jumped the gun a little too soon. All right, there we go. So yeah, we didn't know if it was going to be in multiple parts, but this is why he labeled it part one. He only covered till the Buddha, but I actually also have his timeline that actually covers further than that too. Like we have Alexander, we have all these civilizations that you know Chandragupta, all these figures in Indian history. And reason is it's kind of similar to what we're doing with Rome is that it feels unfair. Also, we're also part one. We're history nerds. Let's just get it out of there. We're big history nerds. Second is that it's unfair to talk about India without talking about its history. Um, so This is the this is the earliest habitation what we found evidence of. Rates from 60,000 BC roughly to 32,768 BCE. So this is very old history. And with at least modern humans or modern Homo sapiens, we've found early depictions of very old settlements, so to speak. I think the oldest settlement was found in the region of Balochistan. Now, keep in mind, when we say India, we're not just talking about India, modern India today. We're talking about Pakistan and Bangladesh combined together with India, because this
But
is
isn't Balochistan in Iran?
no, this is the Balochistan in Pakistan.
Yeah,
Where
but isn't Balochistan a region of Iran? If I'm not.
Oh no, not because it got split. It's divided, right? With the Balochistan regions. So it's divided into
Oh,
three:
all right.
Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan.
All right, so one part, because I've heard Balochistan is a region in Iran. Sorry.
Oh no, no worries. Because geographically speaking, there's a lot of provinces like Punjab, for example, exists both in Pakistan and India, because said provinces were kind of like separated during partition. And also, I think there was this weird tussle with Iran as well, which Pakistan, or I think at that time India, retained the Balochistan region, like their version. So I would love to look into the history of that, the Baloch region. Um, but yes, this is Pakistan's version of Balochistan, and I think I was watching a documentary about it, and yeah, there have been a lot of artifacts that they found, figurines, especially in the Pakistan region of Balochistan, and we've also found like the Rani Kot Fort, which is in Sindh, so the Sindh province of Pakistan. So a lot of these things you can find in the Harappa region as well. So Harappa, Multan, province of Sindh. So we have some very old settlements. So here he says like there were multiple waves of migrations. Yeah, over tens of millennia, and we don't know. We actually don't know when this happened because let's face it, this is way far back into history. We can only find evidence, archaeological evidence of this. And then the first migrates says came from about 65,000 from the coastal migration. So these were within South and Southeast Asia, Western Asian or Iranian hunter gatherers. So a lot of these were West Asian or Iranian, mostly Iranian hunter gatherers migrating to South Asia over the last glacial period too. So let's face it, Iranians are basically our closest relatives in the Middle East, if you think about it. So, hello, Jen. How are you doing today?
Good day. Hi, guys. How are you?
That's okay. That's okay. So, today we're covering pre-Islamic India, and I think you had a specific interest to covering Buddhism. However, when we get to that part, I think I might give it to you briefly to what do you call it? Cover the history behind it. But right now we're kind of like going early history. This is like the Harappan civilization, so the earliest vestiges, and lots of South Asian hunter gatherers. A lot of this is the population of the Indus Valley, and most of the Indus Valley is located in modern day Pakistan. So this is where the actual civilization starts. Earliest they say the settlement or was around 7,000 BCE. Some call it a Harappan, but yeah, and lasted till about 600 BCE, roughly speaking, and it has received considerable attention. Um, so many writers they think that the Indus Valley religion itself was the precursor to modern in Indian religions or the practices of modern India today. There is a sparsity to the evidence, though, and the fact that the Indus script is undeciphered practically to this day. There was Ginny, I was actually reading into the trade between the Indus Valley and the Babylonians. So they did
Yeah.
find some coins from
They
those.
also, I can add more. They've also found agate stones coming from Yemen in the Indus
Yes,
ruins. And there is also a statue found in southern Arabia
yeah,
that originates from India due to
absolutely.
the composition of the
And this
stone.
goes and this goes to show that how far back international or this kind of trade went. Like there was a lot of trading within these regions. So it goes to show how far back it goes. And I'm not sure even how old the Silk Road is, practically. So, and this was, like I said, a Bronze Age civilization. Again, I need to really brush my thing on when did Bronze Age started and end. So it was one of the northwestern civilization regions of South Asia, 3313, and then it's mature from 2600 to 1900. Yeah, and keep in mind there's a lot of like weird timelines too, because it depends on like what we have found as evidence too. So we don't know what kingdoms were there, who were the rulers, because we did find evidence of like very good drainage systems in the Indus Valley. Very, very good drainage system. There was a flood in Pakistan recently, and what happened is that the Indus Valley they actually drained down, so like the flood wasn't able to like affect it as much. So the way they had built the system was very for its time very advanced, and practically that was what surprises there's like practically like personal hygiene too. You have washrooms that can even rival to those today as well too. So you could practically live during the Indus Valley civilization and not have problems, and instead of going to the field you might as well use the washroom in the Indus Valley civilization. So maybe we could have been able to live it during that time. So um and yes, like with Egypt, with Mesopotamia or Babylon, or Samaria, which is modern day Iraq, it's one of the three oldest early civilizations of the Near East and South Asia. And it's most widespread. It spans the area stretching to today's northeast Afghanistan, throughout much of what is now Pakistan, and into northwestern India. So mostly north and northwestern of India, because again, it's going along the basins of the Indus River. And the Indus River also has like, a title called the Abbasid River as well, like the father of rivers. So it's very like, it was also seen as even during the Muslim rule, it was seen as like during a very had some very mystical things about it too. So the Indus River itself has quite the history, and even today it serves as like the freshwater source for Pakistan, and it has five different rivers attached to it: Sutlej, Ravi, and Jhelum. That's the famous Hydaspes River, where the battle between Porus and Alexander took place. So there's a lot of like what do you call it? The Indus seals, like the seals, they kind of focus on one element. I've kind of seen mostly a bullock. That's the seal. And there have been various attempts at religious significance, but again, many scholars feel like okay, it's not enough evidence for like a religious practice, so to speak. Um, Especially when we have like figurines with human form, it's much discussion because again, they could also be toys too, relatively, or they could also be figurines that have were collection items, or they could be have some religious significance as well too. So you never know with these figurines, that is. And of course, we have the famous swastika, the symbol which Hitler adopted and butchered. But this is a symbol sacred to multiple Indian religions. And I'm guessing like this is when it was developed, like it was two snakes. It was Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. These are the three religions that have this symbolism, the swastika. Um, this icon has been located in many Indus Valley artifacts, and it's a fringe view. It's like it says here, continuum has been posited by a few scholars, but it's a fringe view. Possehl finds such supposition to be not sound. And again, I think
There
it's
is
because there's
there
very
is also
little
the
evidence.
issue that the swastika is also a symbol that is present in many Indo-European religions, also that
Absolutely.
resulted in the Western world. So it could be also coming from the
E-
Indo-Aryan migrations that came
Exactly.
later.
Exactly. And I go also Indo-Aryan. A lot of the Indo-Aryan are mostly located in what we like the Persian, Iranian, Central Asian region. So this could have gone west or east. So it's kind of like that weird spot. Um, and with Jonathan Mark Canorio says that artifacts were utilized by political and religious leaders of subcontinents, but he claims ties to Hinduism with the Indus Valley civilization. There could be, but the only similarity most scholars have found is just a name, which is the Sindh River or Indus, which is where the name Hind derives from. Um, and I think in the last episode you said that in Arabic this is also seen as an insult too. So yes, now where we are at now at the Aryan invasion. Let's also debunk a little myth here. Aryans are not white people. This was a myth perpetrated by Nazis and by Hitler. Screw
I
him.
mean, this depends really upon how you define white, but they are actually described as being more
Like lighter skins,
fair-skinned.
but like not of Germanic. They're not Germanic. They're
No,
not
no,
Caucasian.
definitely not. I'm not saying that that
No,
has anything to do with
not
that.
Germanic. Not Germanic at all.
No,
Again,
no.
you could say they're white, but
They
not
were an
like
entirely
German whites.
different
This
branch
is
of
more like a yeah.
Indo-Europeans.
This is more like an Iranian kind of a white. So the Iranian light skinned. So
Arguably, you do see a lot of Central Asian, Indo-European, Iranian peoples that are actually very white-skinned if you look at those
yes,
that are in Central Asia, because they are
absolutely.
kind of like Slavic peoples almost in how they
And
look.
there's some like overlap too with the Slavic races in regions like Azerbaijan, which were under Iran as well, were taken away from Russia. So you have some mixing as well there too. So there's like it's overlap. So
No,
yes,
no, but the Scythians were an
the
ancient Iranic
Scythians,
people. Yeah, and they were
yes,
active around in the Ukraine and Russia region. So
and it's
Iranic peoples actually were up very large up north in the past.
yeah. So these are Iranian peoples basically then, and Scythians. I'm guessing. I remember reading something about the Scythians that they are one of the I would say extinct ethnicities or somewhat
Yes,
extinct
they
ethnicities.
are they do have some relatives down in the Caucasus area,
Yeah.
minor peoples.
Yes. But like mostly this one of the races of the past that has been like I would say almost extinct at this point. We still have
Yes.
like modern relatives, but still. Um and yeah, so these are Indo-Aryan migrations. And remember, Aryan is also described one of the old names for Iran is also called Ariana. So these also could be these are migrations and invasions of Indo-Aryan peoples. So these are a lot more, what do you call it, Indo-Aryan, and they're mainly settled in North India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. These peoples they moved from Central Asia, and they started from 2000 BCE. But yes, I think the myth was we were thinking of was like no, they're not Germanic peoples. These are Central Asians. And as a slow diffusion during the late Harappan, which led to a language shift in northern Indian subcontinent, And several hundred years later, the Iranian languages were brought into the Iranian plateau by the Iranians, who were closely related to the Indo-Aryans. So yeah, they're basically, we have some close relatives in Iran.
You
Whoops.
also don't have one migrations, you have several.
Several. And these are several peoples.
And by the way, there have also been Scythian migrations down. So the guys I talked about from Ukraine, the Scythians, there has also been migrations down into India. This is
Yes.
why one of the theories about Buddha is actually that his tribe, where he came from, Shakyamuni, is from Sauka, which is a tribe of Scythians.
Right. Okay.
So there is some debate about this. This is not clear, but I did look at a seminar about this far in the past.
Which
Yeah, but aren't they just doing sounds like they're just playing sounds like Scythian, Shakyan, like I'm not real sure how credible it is.
There is also some, evidence that there is some sort of genetic connection there as well. So it's not just sounds in the area. It could be entirely wrong, or it could have been that Buddha was more connected to local traditions. But these things are far in the past and hard to clarify sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also have like Proto-Indo-Iranian culture, which gives a rise to Indo-Aryans and Iranians, which developed in the Central Asian steppes of the Caspian Sea and as the Sen-Tashta culture. This was roughly 2050 to 1800 BCE in present-day Russia and Kazakhstan, and developed further as the Andronova culture in 2000 to 1450 BCE. So we can kind of see that there's a lot of migrations. Also, with the Indo-Aryans, they split off sometime between 2000 to 1600 from the Indo-Iranians and migrated southwards to the Bactria Margiana culture, which they borrowed from some of their distinctive religious beliefs and practices. From the Bactria Margiana culture, the Indo-Aryans migrated into northern Syria, and possibly in multiple waves, like you said, Jimmy, multiple waves, and into the Punjab, which is northern Pakistan and India. So the Punjab province, while the Iranians could have reached western Iran before 1300 BCE, both bringing them with the Indo-Iranian languages.
They also continued afterwards, after this.
Yes.
The latest migrations actually happened in the AD, after Christ.
Really? Like the after
Yes.
of now the modern term is before it's BCE. What's the new term again? It's BCE and ACE.
Anno Dominus, the year
No.
of our
I know
Lord.
there's Anno Dominus, but
Common era.
All right.
Because yeah, Anno Dominus, when they kind of look at the Gospels, it's like Jesus' birth comes around 6 BC or 7 AD. Which one is it? Based on the Gospels. So
I'm just
why
using the term AD because it's
you're used to it.
Yeah.
You're used to it. I'm used to it too, like the Anno Domini. And so yeah, so this is the map of the migrations. Here's another migration here, and then these are the kind of like the peoples, how they migrated. So it's very close to Europe, but also very close to like the Middle East too. So there's been a lot of, and here there's migrations here. This is a very good like presentation. And yeah, there's these what do you call it, these empires. So yeah, this is where this is very fascinating. Oh crap, I can't see this stuff. Wait 1 second. Why did he make this so small? Why did he make this? Can I zoom this in? Whoops. I'll try to read this as we go along. But holy crap, this is a very small font. I should have checked this. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Okay. I'll try to read this because it's in the middle of. Okay. So this is the Vedic period in India after the Great Migration of the Indo-Aryans. And it says here, as per the scripture of Rig Veda, the oldest Hindu scripture in Vedic Sanskrit, and other excavations, the Indo-Aryans migrated due to religious persecution, climate, and environmental changes. Due to a lack of actual evidence, these sources are not considered reliable. And yes, this is, even though it's from scripture, we can't necessarily say it's reliable because sometimes with religious scripture, it's many events become supernatural and also exaggerated to an extent too, biased. So there's also the issue. Though some say that the Indo-Aryans came with force and military spread and occupied the places of Indus Valley and northeastern India like skilled warriors. Some others thought they believed in harmony and settled alongside the people of the Indus Valley and were as well administered way, trading their beliefs, knowledge, and goods. I feel like it could be somewhere in the middle. Doesn't have to be. We can't necessarily exclude the one or the other. It could be a bit of both because, like you said, Jenny, history is kind of complicated. So it could have just been as complex.
There is probably a lot of complexity here due to, these migrations probably not happening under one banner.
Exactly.
Though it should be said, though, for to reduce the complexity here a bit, we have seen similar patterns about genetic diversity or genetic, groupings of peoples and castes
Hmm.
corresponding more with lower castes of the original inhabitants and having more foreign genes in higher caste people. And you see
That
a similar pattern in the caste systems that developed in the Indo-European religions in the Western world, where
yes,
in the south of Europe, because when the Indo-Europeans moved into Europe in the northern parts, they more or less replaced the original inhabitants and completely eradicated them. Thus, you didn't get the same caste system structures that you did get in the south. And there you can see that, for example, the differentiation between higher, for example, castus comes from Latin. This is actually
yes.
a Roman concept, the caste, we think. But there you can actually see that the higher castes in Roman society also correspond to people that have more foreign genes than people in the lower castes. Now, the one theory is
Interesting.
that this is due to the fact that they moved in and took over and thus became this barrier, group in society. So they did act as overlords from the beginning. One other theory is that it is more the fact that higher people of higher status have an easier time getting marriages further away, and thus and has an easier way to actually
Have
integrate with
mix in
foreigners.
with
Yes.
foreign culture. Yes, this is also plausible too. As I know in the Indian caste system or the Hindu caste system rather, you have the Brahmins, the Kshatriya, the merchants. Then you have the lower caste, and many of the lower castes are described with different features, and the Brahmin class with the different features. Um, though,
But that was a British. The so the cast, the original Varna or um, Jati system was by your social. It was a social hierarchy, right? So there was one British guy. You could look him up. His name is Lord Risley. No, Herbert Hope Risley, I think. And he was the one who brought in the um he started measuring like the width of people's noses and like their facial features and kind of things and implemented this like cast by looks system, which is kind of like what they have like residually, is thought of today, even though it's not really. But like,
That was not what I meant. What I meant was that your social function, your caste is your social function. What I say is that there is a sort of correspondence with, genetic markers, not with, necessarily with your appearance, but, with, if you look deeper into genetic studies, you can actually see differences between these social groups.
And also, Jen, like we kind of also see, I think, that what Ginny was also saying, like probably either they could have been foreigners, like with the higher caste, or marriages were more possible too with people from the upper class because of, what do you call it? You just have access to like
More
foreign
but there were,
choices.
princesses.
yeah, but there was all caste within, like, each tribe had its own set of, like, there was high caste people of the tribe, there was low caste people of the tribe.
Yes, but yes, but there is still could also be not just vertical differentiation, but also horizontal as well between groups. What I'm more, discussing here is the fact that you actually see similar patterns, not only in the, caste systems of India, but also in the caste systems in the Western world, with the caste system in, the Latin caste system of Romans, for example.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
There is a,
So
fascinating correspondence here.
yeah, and it's quite fascinating, um, and also it is. Yeah, so we were at, there were several reasons behind the Indo-Aryans' decision to settle in India, which is easy cooperation with resident Indians, well-maintained administration, and a less oppressive attitude towards the Indo-Aryans from the Indians, that is. However, it was evident that there would be clashes of difference of opinions regarding religion, beliefs, and origins. All this led to many society changes, some positive, some more improvements on culture, agriculture, politics, and economics. And this was like what influenced the early Vedic period. Now, the Vedic period gained importance after the decline of the Harappan civilization. The Indo-Aryans and their traditions left a mark on the early and late Vedic periods. Though the Indo-Aryans brought their religion and literature with them, it is believed that the language spoken by the Indo-Aryans when they first arrived in the subcontinent had a significant influence on the local language. The earliest and oldest Hindu scripture, the Rig Veda, covers changes in ancient India during the Vedic period in Sanskrit. Rig Veda also highlights the religious belief of the time, the origin of nature, the belief in various gods, and the prosperity in nature. Ancient Vedic Sanskrit language shows conflicts and early hostilities between peoples and their struggles. These verses they show the progress of faith and reformation. And over time, the Indo-Aryans adopted an agricultural lifestyle. So you can see their growth from their initial use of cattle, sheep, and goat rearing, and use of pottery, carpentry in the later Vedic period. So agricultural practices heavily influenced the way people lived, and it became important to trade for the benefits gained for interacting with the people of different tribes. So yeah, there's I can kind of see a growth. And also, finally, I can put my laptop away because I had to legit go inside. So I blame this on Nick. But yes, so it's very like interesting of the Indo-Aryan influence within the region. So then we have I've actually studied this, the rise of Gandhara in Pakistani history. It's the ancient kingdom of Mahajanapeda, located in modern day northern Pakistan and parts of eastern Afghanistan. Gandhara was mainly located in the valley of Peshawar, the Potahar Plateau, and the Kabul River. Its main cities were Purushapura, modern day Peshawar, literally meaning the city of man, Varmayana, or modern day Bamiyan, and Takshashila, which is modern day Taxila. And there's actually still lots of remnants of civilization that we do find even to this day. I did check out in a museum in Pakistan of the Taxila. Um, so the kingdom of Gandhara, it lasted from the first millennium BCE to the 11th century AD or ACE, and it attained its height from the 1st century to the 5th century under the Buddhist Kushan kings. And these kings are very interesting because the Kushan kings, not only are they Buddhist, but also there's a lot of Greek influences as well with the Kushan Empire. So the Hindu term Shahi is used by the writer Al-Biruni to refer to the ruling Hindu dynasty that took over from the Turki Shahlan ruled region during the period before the Muslim conquest of the 10th and 11th centuries. So there's evidence of Stone Age human inhabitants of Gandhara, including stone tools and burnt bones. I actually saw some of these in a museum in Islamabad. And this was discovered at the Sangha near Mardan and the area caves. These artifacts are approximately, it says here, 15,000 years old. Damn, that's still very old. The more recent excavations point to 30,000 before the present. I mean, it's possible. 30,000 years is definitely possible. The region also shows an influx of Southern Central Asian culture into the Bronze Age with the Gandhara grave culture, likely corresponding to the migration of Indo-Aryan speakers and the nucleus of Vedic civilization. So this culture survived till 1000 BCE. Its evidence has been discovered in the hilly regions of Swat and Dir, and even at the Taxila. The name of the Gandharis, it's attested in the Rig Veda and the ancient inscriptions dating back to the Achaemenid Persia, which is around the time of the biggest Persian region, which was you had Cyrus the Great, you had Xerxes, and all Darius, all these guys. The Behistun inscriptions listed the 23 territories of King Darius the First from 519, and includes Gandhara along with Bactria and Tatagush. In the Book of the Histories by Herodotus, Gandhara is named as a source of tax collections for King Darius or Darius. So I think during this time, we also have the basic tenets of Hinduism are established. Again, I'm not a huge expert on Hinduism, but I'll just go off of this. Indian scholars of the so-called Vedic period come into Vedas in written form. The term Veda means knowledge, and that they're thought to contain the fundamental knowledge relating to the underlying cause of, function of, and personal response to existence. They are considered amongst the oldest, if not the oldest, religious works in the world. They're commonly referred to as scripture, which is accurate in that they can be defined as holy writ concerning the nature of the divine. Unlike the scriptures of other religions, the Vedas are not thought to have been revealed to a certain person or persons at a specific historical moment. They're believed to have always existed, and they were apprehended by sages in the deep meditative states at some point prior to 1500 BCE. But when is it that precisely? It's unknown. So yeah, it is one of the oldest religions, modern religions to this day, as people state too. Actually, the oldest modern religion, I would one can make the argument for, though it's not the oldest religion to exist, but very old, very very old. So the Vedas.
Why
This is
do you
the
think
Vedas.
it's not the oldest to exist? I'm sorry.
The oldest because we have preceding religions prior to Hinduism that existed
Which
in the
ones?
region. So we had the Sumerian religions, we have the Babylonian belief systems that are actually prior to, and there's also pre-Vedic beliefs like the Kalash peoples that believed. The Kalash people today have some
Certain datings
pre-Vedic.
of Zoroastrianism also places
Exactly.
it in.
Yeah, and not only that, so we have a lot of older belief systems, not necessarily within the region, but around the world too. So it's not the oldest to exist, but it is one of the oldest today. It's the oldest today for sure, but not necessarily the oldest belief system, so to speak, or organized belief system. So right here, we have the Vedas. It's regarded as Shruti in Hinduism, meaning what is heard. It is contrasted with the other texts designated Smritis, or I'm butchering that. I apologize. My Muslim brain is butchering that.
No, you're right. It's Smriti. Smriti.
Smriti. What is remembered? Now, the accounts of great heroes and their struggles in the works, such as the Mahabharata, and Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Bhagavad Gita. And I've actually read some sections of these texts. Although some sects of Hinduism regarded the Bhagavad Gita as the Shruti. The texts which make up the four Vedas are the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, the Yajur Veda, and the Atharva Veda. So each of these is further divided into types of text included within them. Aranyakas, the rituals and observances, Brahmanas, the commentaries on said rituals, Samhitas, these are the benedictions, prayers, and mantras, and then Upanishads, which is the philosophical narratives and dialogues.
I just thought about one thought. Aryanakas. Does this name have anything to do with purity or being clean?
I'm not necessarily sure, because again, I wish Nick was here to actually clarify that.
I just wondered.
Yeah.
Because I know that
which word?
The term, this term, Aranyakas, does it have to do with purity?
Ritual purity or something like that.
Ritual purity.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Because I know that Aryan, or the word that is used for Aryan in its various forms in Indo-European languages, have become clean.
Yes.
Or air.
Yes.
For example, for example, ren in Swedish means pure.
Yes.
If from Ireland, Iran from Iran.
Yes, yes. And Iran
and Arianus, if in Latin and such. Clean.
Yeah. This is very fascinating that this term became the term for clean, or purity.
No, it was the term for clean or cleanness and purity, and then it became a lot of other words. So I wondered.
So they say the Sanskrit origin of the word is forest.
For Aryan.
Aryanka.
Interesting, because it says here it had some ritual observances. I'm guessing
Aranya meaning forest is the root word Aranya.
Yeah. Interesting. So which I am kind of thinking like maybe this has something to do with like a ritual observances, but also
the Aryankas
nature.
Yes, exactly. The Aryankas were like it has to exactly do with that, with the rituals, and the word is because like the rishis would go into the forest and become aesthetic. So this has all of the like sacrifice instructions and everything like that.
Yeah. Now this is very interesting origins of that too. So this I could definitely picture some sages going into forests, meditating or performing rituals. Then we have the Vedic learning that Nick pointed out. So the Vedas are authoritatively transmitted by an oral tradition from father to son or from teacher guru to the student shishya in a samprade. So the Vedas are supposed to repeat precise sounds of the word itself from the time of creation and forward, hence the form of hymns and chants in major parts. The reciting the Vedas is said to be like singing along with the universe's creative melody. Okay, this is reminding me very much of the Quran, which gave birth to all the visible and invisible from the beginning of time. The Rig Veda establishes the norm and the tone for the Samaveda and Yajur Veda to follow, whereas the Atharva Veda develops its own vision that is inspired by the earlier works, but it follows its own path. So this is kind of like where the Vedic learning also developed during this time. Then we have the Rig Veda, which is an ancient Indian collection of Vedic Sanskrit hymns, which is also called suktas. It was one of the four sacred Hindu scriptures known as the Vedas. Now, the Rig Veda sounds and texts have been passed down orally since the second millennium BCE. The Rig Veda is regarded as one of Hinduism's most important texts. It has aroused the curiosity of scholars and historians due to its historical importance and antiquity. It is an old Indian collection of Vedic Sanskrit hymns. The Rig Veda is divided into 10 volumes known as mandalas. It has 10,600 verses and 1,028 hymns, and it is the first Indo European text written in any language. The universe was created by Prajapati, the first god and the essential foundation of creation, according to the Rig Veda. The hymns, known as sukta, were composed to be used in ceremony. So, by the way, I'm actually very surprised by the name of this god, Prajapati. Um, then the Rig Veda mentions Indra, which is the most significant deity, and the sky god Varuna, and the fire god Agni. I think this is where the term Ag also comes from in Urdu as well, too. It comes from the term Agni.
Agni.
So,
Also,
yeah,
ignis
Ag.
in Latin, fire.
Yes, fire. So a lot of these terms, and even modern Urdu, Ag lagana, Ag literally means fire. And the sun god, Surya. Now, Surya is an interesting term because the modern term, Urdu term for is Suraj in both Hindi and Urdu. So Suraj, this is where it comes from, Surya. So were the three other important deities in the Rig Veda, in addition to previous Aryan deities. So this is very fascinating that you have these deities like Agni and Surya have influence in even to this day in language. Then the Yajur Veda is
It's
mostly
probably less that they had influence in language and that their names are derived from
from
Indo-European words for fire.
yes, probably also that too, and it holds that what do you call it? They were named after said items, so or words for items too, or compounds or elements. I'm not sure what the actual term is because elements would be inaccurate scientifically speaking. So
They are a sort of anthropomorphization of
yeah, of
forces,
compounds.
natural
Yeah, I would
forces
say
and objects.
compounds more than elements. Um, but yeah, the Yajur Veda is mostly a Veda of religious mantras written in prose. So this was between 1200 to 800 BCE. The Yajur Veda was written nearly contemporaneously with the Samaveda and the Atharvaveda. The second of the four Vedas or holy books, and it is said to have emerged from the southern face of Brahm, which is the creator. So Brahma or Brahm, his southern face, basically his chin. So it is also known as Adharya Veda, which is because it's largely employed in Vedic sacrifices, with the Advaryo served as the main priest in charge of the entire sacrifice. Yajus are the names are given to its mantras. These mantras may be found in Yajus. Around 1875 poems from the earliest and oldest layer of the Yajurveda Samhita are original. However, they are taken and developed on the basis of Rigvedic lines. And there are two types of Yajurveda are Krishna, black and dark, and Shukla, white or bright. Interesting word for Krishna, black and dark. Oh man, I'm gonna have to squeeze my face again on this one. Damn it, Nick. Should have increased the font on this. So the Veda chants and songs known as the Samaveda, it is a component of Hinduism scriptures and it's written in Vedic Sanskrit. The Samaveda was authored during the years of 1200 800 BCE. This Veda contains a reference to public worship. So the Samaveda, one of Hinduism's four major Vedas, is an ancient Hindu book. The Book of Song or Veda chants and even Yoga of Song are all names for it. It's a collection of chants and melodies. It's simply the words of the Rig Veda arranged to music. The Samavedas, I wonder why this music sound, whenever I've been to like the chants, it's so repetitive. The Samavedas words are all intended to be repeated during Soma sacrifice ceremonies, and procedures evolved from it. And the Samaveda was written only for that purpose. Indian classical music and dance are built on the foundation of the Samaveda. It is said to have the reservoir for beautiful chants. Although it contains fewer verses than the Rig Veda, it has lengthier texts. There are three recensions of the Samaveda text: Kautama, Rayaniya, and Jaiminiya. Samayeda, like the other Vedas, comprises many layers of the text, with the Samhita being the oldest and the Upanishads being the newest. The Atharva Veda, which is the knowledge reservoir of Atharvanas, of everyday living routines, according to the author. Now, although this book is the fourth Veda, is only recently included in the Hinduism's Vedic culture. Now, even it's known as the fourth Veda as a Hindu sacred text and one of the four Vedas, and it was formed between 1000 to 800 BC, roughly the same time, but more. He's more Nick. What Nick's saying is towards 800. This Veda enumerates the great detail of all life's rituals. Collection of 730 hymns and suktas, 6,000 mantras, and 20 volumes. Geez, they wrote a lot of books. Two Atharva Veda recensions have survived: Paipalada and Sanakya. It is recognized as a Veda of magical formulas and consists of three main Upanishads: Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, and Prashna Upanishad. Now, both Orthodox and heterodox Indian intellectual traditions gradually recognized Arthavana songs and traditional folk practices as another Veda much later than the previous three. Early Buddhist Nikaya texts, for example, do not recognize Atharva Veda as the fourth Veda and only reference three Vedas. Because of the association, the Atharva Veda is sometimes known as the Brahma Veda or the Veda of Brahma priests. So, the significance of said the Vedas are they are the earliest texts of Hinduism, and they're the foundations of Indian literature. Now, they're regarded as one of Hindu's religion's most revered scriptures and are said to be among the oldest texts. A concept of Vedas, according to the ancient sages, has always been and exists beyond the concept of time. Between 1500 and 500 BCE, the so-called Vedic period of India, the Vedas were mainly passed down orally from generation to generation until they were written down on record. Oh boy, did that not work out well. The primary goal of the Vedas is to bridge the gap between the super sensuous dimension beyond human comprehension and a man's everyday state of awareness. The Vedas argues that there's a fundamental connection between man and spirit, the universe and living beings, and that these connections hold the answers to life's to all of difficulties. Now, there is Vardhamana, the great hero. He's one of the sages, and this is according to the Jain tradition. He's also known as Mahavira, and he lived between 599 and 527 BCE. Yeah, roughly a good lifespan for someone of that time. He's a sage credited with founding of non-theistic religion of Jainism, a belief system established in the 6th and 5th centuries BCE in India. It's very similar to like the some of the texts of the Jewish scripture too, which provide adherence with the disciplined path towards spiritual liberation. Now, according to Jain tradition, he's not the founder of the religion, but only the 24th Tirthankara, or the fort builder. So he inherited the fort builder. He's like the 24th Titraka of the faith who inherited the vision from his predecessors and established it in its present form. Jains believe that the tenets of the faith are ancient, older than Hinduism, and were received by the earlier Tirthankaras, who taught them to disciples and handed them down through generations. According to the Jain tradition, Vardhamana was born of the warrior Kshatriya caste to royal family, grew up in luxury as a prince, an heir apparent, and renounced it all when he was 30 years old after the death of his parents. He went into the woods to live as a spiritual ascetic. And after 12 years of intense meditation, fasting, and denial of the flesh, achieved omniscience while sitting beneath a sala tree on the banks of the river. After his enlightenment, he began to preach what he had been revealed to him. Oh boy. Attracting disciples. Oh boy. And established his philosophical school, which is at the time was simply one among many others. Jainism was popularized by royal patronage, especially by the early Mauryan Empire. The Mauryans were 322 to 185 BCE and continued to gain adherents afterwards. In the present day, Jains continue to reside mainly in India but have established communities around the world. And there is a decent presence of Jains in India, modern day India. And yeah, so I've actually seen even their cuisine too, like very unique cuisine as well. So apparently Jain food suits my stomach the best because it doesn't use like garlic or onions. So it's been the easiest on my stomach, so I'll give them that. So yes, now we come to Buddhism, the rise 563 to 483 BCE. And it has seen some more of a philosophical system than a religion because it does not have core beliefs about a creator of God or gods. Additionally, it is different from the other world faiths in that its founder, Siddhartha Gautama, did not have a mystical vision nor a revelation from a higher being. Instead, he based his teachings on conclusions he drew from a very long period of deep thought, reflection, and experience. I've actually read some fascinating stories of attributed to Buddha, that is, attributed to Siddhartha Gautama in Pakistan as well. It is generally accepted that Buddhism started with Siddhartha Gautama, a prince from the northeast India and Nepal. Siddhartha was approximately 2,500 years ago in Nepal. That's when he was born. He was born into a life of luxury as a prince, similar to the founder of Jain. His father was King Sudhanta Tharu, and his mother was Queen Maya. He grew up in India, which at the time was dominated by the Brahmanic religions. He had many Hindu beliefs, including the idea of samsara, and which was deeply embedded in Hindu teachings. Now, he had this weird path of enlightenment. Siddhartha saw four things he had never seen before and was shocked that he didn't really understand what he'd seen. The first sight was an old man. Siddhartha had never seen anyone old before and questioned his chariot driver, Channa. And what about what he was looking? Channa explained that when people get older, they physically decline. His second sight was illness. When Siddhartha saw an ill person by the side of the road, he was upset that he had never seen anyone fall ill before. Channa explained that during lives, people get ill. The third sight was a dead person being carried. Channa explained that everyone dies eventually. And the fourth sight was a holy man walking through the street. This person made Siddhartha curious, as the holy man was looking to understand the truth. Boy, this guy was super, what do you call it? You know, what's that word called? Like, boy, you were quite naive. So,
Well, it wasn't that he was naive, is that it so he missed out like a lot of this is a very brief summary, right? But the reason why he was so naive is that because when his mother fell pregnant, the rishi, the brahmin, or the priest, basically, that was in their village had made a prophecy that he would either become a great king or a great holy man. So his father, not wanting him obviously to become a great holy man, he wanted him to continue being a good king, had basically secluded him his whole life. He didn't allow him to see old people or dead people or sick people, so he wasn't even allowed to leave the the his home. So when he finally did get out and he's kind of seeing all these things, like it hit him really hard, right? So that was kind of like, he wasn't just like, oh my God, I never knew people died, but he was literally shielded from that,
Yeah, like
his
very
whole life.
practically, like his father like pulled some next level, you know, a narcissistic protective parent
Well, it
nonsense.
was
Yeah,
because, people had a lot of, faiths in the rishis and that of that day. So if they said something, they also predicted his mom would die after having him, which she did. So after she died, they're like, wow, like this guy predicted this, most likely what else he said is going to become true as well.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
mhm.
This guy knew, like, delve into the supernatural and getting panicked and whatnot, and yeah. But here it's his path to enlightenment states that Siddhartha wanted to find out about why people suffer and how it might be possible to end this suffering. Decided that he would be leaving the palace. This is a very famous story, actually, very famous, and his family behind to go into the world and try to find some answers. He gave up all his possessions and expensive clothes to try to understand more about suffering. He became an ascetic, which means he lived a simple life and with no possessions and refused to do anything that he would give him pleasure. He also tried to be disciplined and meditating to try to understand suffering. He fasted for long periods of time, and of this caused him to suffer even more. Eventually, he was so weak that he ate some rice, and this made him realize that um, he still didn't understand how to get rid of suffering. He realized that the way to live was the middle way between luxury and poverty. So Siddhartha continued to meditate over time, and eventually he became enlightened. And then he became known as the Buddha, which means the enlightened one. So yeah, I think this is where Nick's research ends. But I also have another timeline, so I can actually go to the Buddha timeline. But yeah, Jen, did you want to add a few things? Let me just close
No,
this.
I mean,
Yeah.
a couple things like Jainism and Buddhism. So the Jain Mahavira was not the first man to kind of break away from the Vedic traditions. There's always been, they're called Shamanas. So like the Shamanas are even in, I think, in the one of the Vedas. So there was always a sect or certain people who didn't either believe in the gods or believe in the rituals, or there's always kind of people who oppose those things. So he didn't necessarily like find anything or create any new ideas, right? There was always people that existed that were called Shamanas, and they were the kind of non religious part of Hindus, which Buddha and Jaina Dharma would fall under Shramana traditions.
So what you're saying is that many of these beliefs existed prior to the quote unquote birth of these religions, respectively, Jainism and Buddhism, that the
I mean,
ideas
they
were
did
already there.
exist. I might remember it badly, but since it was a very long time since I looked into Hinduism and Buddhism, but there was also a philosophical tradition that was very close to Buddhism in Hinduism, also a
Mhm.
kind of current like that going on. wasn't there?
Oh yeah, 100%. Even now, like the Advaita Vedanta, some
Yes,
people
when
think like Buddha just ripped off Advaita Vedanta. He's just like this. And there's people who consider Lord Buddha an avatar of Vishnu. So there's like different kinds of, but yeah, they're all definitely different philosophical traditions. Advaita, Advaita, Shaivism, Vaishnavism. They're all just different kind of, philosophical things,
And
which has been common from the start.
yeah, and which is why, like with religions, they're not born, or ideas, they're not born out of a vacuum or not on a spot, but rather like they evolve over time. So there's this evolution of, and it's a lot slower. The process is a lot slower than what most people would expect, that is. So right here we have Siddhartha Gautama. Again, this his 563 to 483 BC, his life. It is according to scholarly consensus. It's not confirmed necessarily that this was the timeline that he lived in, but it's the consensus of the historians and scholars that this was the time that he lived. So we also had, during this time, Bimbasara rules in the Magadha kingdom in India. And then after, we also had the Persians, they conquered the Indus Valley too during this time. So when Persia conquers, we have the Achaemenid rule in the Gandhara region. And this is during, I think Cyrus was the height of the Persian, the big Achaemenid empire. So this lasted till 325, so this lasted 2 centuries. Then we also had the Indian epic Ramayana, which was composed by the sage Valmiki in 500 BCE, and the kingdom of Magadha around the same year, which was ruled by Bimbisara, was the most powerful state in India. Now, from 492 to 460, Ajashutra rules. He's the ruler of the Magadha kingdom. Then we come to the life of Chandragupta. There's a weird gap between 460 and 340, but yeah, we do come to the life of
the
Chandragupta.
Gupta Empire.
The what empire?
The Gupta Empire.
Yes, the Chandragupta is the found. Actually, more of the Mauryan.
No, it's the Mauryan Empire. Yes.
Yeah, the Mauryan. Yeah. This is the Mauryan. So Chandragupta is the first ruler of the Mauryans. And we studied about the Mauryans. That's some very interesting tax collections and how they ran the system too. It's very interesting. Quite a big region too, like almost all of modern day India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So we had this rule, and then during this rule lasted from 320 to 180 BCE. Now during this time as well, we also had the Alexander's campaign in northern India, and it was till the Chihlam River in modern day Pakistan, or the Hydaspes River that they call it, the Greek historians call it, or the River Bees in Punjab, India. That's where his in September 326, his campaign is halted by the so-called ruler Porus. So he was practically so weak. And I think we were discussing, I think you discussed war elephants in your video, Jinni, about war elephants. And I think you mentioned the Alexander's campaign against Porus in that, during that, like how elephants were not necessarily always an disadvantage, but an advantage, but also were more like a self-destruct button too.
They could become that.
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned Alexander's campaign, but that's an example of when that happened. Yes.
Yeah, it was. I think that was. I think one of the elephants ran to the river or something, was set on fire. So it was, or there was a stampede. There's weird details. depending on whose account you read. And this was Porus. However, Porus's campaign against Porus weakened Alexander so much. Like, it took him a year against just one local ruler, Porus, that if he had marched into India, like Chandragupta Maurya India, for example, he would have been crushed practically.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have enough supplies to go against the Mauryans. So
you also have to remember that India is huge. It's not a
yes,
small place.
it's huge, and it was a big geography too. Even if he had the local tribes or what do you call it, rulers ally with him, it would still take a long time. Lots of energy, lots of money, lots of resources. So it would have taken forever. Already he's going off so many campaigns from like Greece, Macedon to like he just conquered big Persia, the big Persian regions, and what do you call it? So, and Afghanistan. So now he's kind of like already like his troops are also tired too, and it's just they're kind of tired of the campaigns. So this was also apparently Chandragupta or his father, I'm not sure which one it was, or his grandfather, was the one who got Porus assassinated. So actually, yeah, during the time of Chandragupta, or it was his son, one of these gentlemen, they had Porus assassinated and replaced, and basically gained that region back. Then we also had the Greek rule in Gandhara ending sometime after the Alec death. Yeah, so this is during the time, a lot of this politics happened. And also Dhanananda, the king of Magadha, is killed by Chandragupta. Yeah, Chandragupta was quite the he would get people killed. And the reign of Chandragupta is like, he establishes it in 321. He establishes himself as like the main ruler. And he seizes the throne and expands the kingdom, northern and central India. And he signs a treaty with the Seleucus I, again, the founder of the Seleucid Empire, or the Seleucid Persians, the Greek Greco-Persians, establishing borders, giving the Punjab to Chandragupta in return for 500 war elephants. Like you said, these were quite valuable in terms of monetary value. So Chandragupta voluntarily abdicated his throne in 298 in favor of his son Bindusara. Now, Jain sources say that Chandragupta turned into an ascetic and follower of Jainism and migrated to the south and starved himself to death. So 298, he also died. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he actually did that to himself. So Chandragupta's son Bindusara rules and expands the Mauryan Empire. And then we have the reign of Ashoka the Great, the more famous. There's even a Shah Rukh Khan movie about this guy. He was the third ruler.
And you can get into very heated debates about how great this dude was.
Yeah, it's very debatable, because there's one half where he's like practically, he turns a 180 in the second half of his rule. That's how it's described.
That's kind of a myth, though. Like, it's not really true. Like, he did patronize Buddhism and kind of,
really,
yeah, definitely. He was probably the one most accredited with its spread across India. Some of even the earliest evidence, well, besides the Gandharan texts of Buddhism, that I think those might be some of the oldest surviving manuscripts in the world, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah,
he also financed expeditions outside of India up into China and like as well.
Yeah, but the pillars that Ashoka engraved like around are some of earliest evidences of like him being a Buddhist patronage, and
Right,
it's
right.
why kind of after the guy who killed him is also kind of credited, or after, no, sorry, maybe him or his son was also kind of accredited with the downfall of Buddhism in India, because after that there was nothing really much holding it together. A lot of the state patronage went back to, Sanatan Dharma, and then way later,
There's
I'm
also,
not sure when Shankaracharya came, but that
there's
was
also
kind
the
of
fact
it.
that Ashoka was kind of disliked by a lot of Hindus, considering that he had done
Exactly.
pretty major repression of them.
Oh,
Right,
really?
and then the
Wow.
Kalinga War, yeah, he did the
Yeah.
Kalinga War, which killed thousands of Hindus. So
Hundreds
it's
Wow.
of
like,
thousands.
yeah, so there's like people, I don't know, it's a mixed kind of
He's
emotion.
a complex figure. Very
Yeah,
complex figure.
exactly.
Because
I
again,
would actually. I mean,
Man of mystery.
he's kind of like a more extreme version of Constantine and of
oh
the early
really?
Islamic caliphs
Caliphs. Oh
in
man.
both directions.
And because there's presentations of him, many I think writings I've seen like, oh, this man was a monster, and then other
Mhm.
writings would praise him, so to speak.
Mhm.
So there's like
Mhm.
I've seen like two extra, at least from the Pakistani sources, I've seen like two extremes, like what Pakistani scholars also, like historians comment. It's like he's seen as been in very big extremes. We don't know the accurate picture of Ashoka, and it's fascinating how you also guys told me like he led to a lot of slaughters. Like yikes! So
I
the
mean,
grave,
his kill count is definitely higher than the Constantine and the Rashidun caliphs.
oof,
There
oof.
is no denying that. But he also tried a lot to actually improve life as well. He tried to, one thing he tried to, he did a lot with the caste system, according to some, and he tried to, take away slavery and replace it with some sort of serfdom
Right,
instead.
like serfdom. Okay, and I think he also had the laws, which were again in terms of criminal laws. That is, like I was looking into his criminal laws, but he introduced a system of like fines and stuff. Then there was a layer depending on the crime. First time you get fines, but you could get your right hand chopped off or one of the hands chopped off if you
Yes,
were stealing. So
that
there's
might.
like
I do know
contradictory
that
accounts.
I do know that he wanted to introduce some sort of crime system as well that kind of reduced the level of uh, the amount of how much you could get away with doing crimes or doing misdeeds in the land if you were of higher status. So he introduced actually
Interesting.
harsher punishments on the higher castes than he did on the lower
Interesting.
ones.
Interesting. Because again, I'm guessing with the lower ones, he would more impose fines. That's what I've read, like more fines, because that in itself will already sort of
This
tip.
fines has to do with the fact that lower class people can't really pay them. But what he
Exactly.
did was that he wanted to the absolute lowest people he didn't want to rise up. So those he had to keep up, but also the highest up. So what he did very much was that he was reliant upon the merchant class, the ones that had the money.
Right.
Sorry, I got it mixed up before, but what he really wanted to focus upon was the merchant class, and that's much of the laws are about financial fines, which can be easily paid by people that actually use money as a
Mm.
transactional
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
means, and people that he was pretty much. You can see a lot of his class interests in how much he supported the merchants,
Yes.
and in turn got supported by them.
So there was definitely like the support from the merchant class, so to speak, the social class of the merchants.
Yeah.
And this is very like which makes it very fascinating too, and also being also a patronage of Buddhism, but also like slaughtering Hindus as well. So there's a very like interesting picture that we get of this.
And also
Man.
ransacking some of the holiest places of Hinduism as well.
Really, really.
Yes, and burning them to the ground.
Oh wow! Like I think because a lot of Indian history, like they kind of downplay it a lot, so you don't read this stuff in like at least the main like both India Pakistan they're not taught this stuff because he's kind of like a lot of his crimes are downplayed.
Buddhism is a past chapter, kind of,
Right,
in India. Sure,
right.
there still exist Buddhists in India, but Buddhism is, a smaller religion in comparison to Islam or Hinduism.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
I'm
kind
guessing
of,
they kind of focus more on the history of Hinduism and Islam compared
yes.
to,
But
Buddhism. Though-
Buddhism,
yeah.
during the time of Asuka, was hardcore.
Mm, yeah, and it was quite the powerful influence,
Yes,
so to speak. So this makes it more, and again, it should get attention. Personally speaking, it should get attention from a historical standpoint because we can kind of also say that you know that's why we kind of want to remove the great titles from many rulers specifically because
Ashoka was great in certain regards. If you look at other things that weren't
yeah,
exactly moral.
yeah, and though some of his morals weirdly matched I know some Shia scholars were actually did praise Ashoka. I heard in Pakistan they used to praise Ashoka for having what do you call it in a system. So I, and now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, what the fuck were they talking about? Seriously, what the fuck were they talking about? Because
mean,
you guys told me like a completely different picture, and it's like, holy shit.
Ashoka is complex. He's kind of like
Yeah,
he did a lot of very good things. You could consider them, especially by our morals, which is kind of strange how he seems to be. But on the other hand, he was also a product of his time, but he was also even
yeah.
more brutal than what was normal for his time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Like
he's kind of like, yeah,
relatively
relatively
speaking, that is.
speaking. So he goes like in both extremes.
Wow. And he goes like very extremes. And Jen, you wanted to say something?
Well, yeah, like in his later days, like he did do a lot of good things. Like
Mm-hmm.
he tried to like not centralize healthcare, but he did like set up a lot of hospitals.
Yes, yes.
He encouraged people to like plant medicinal, Ayurvedic like herbal gardens. He did like forgiveness, like prisoners
Mm-hmm.
should be or criminals should be forgiven when they could, and he did actually keep capital punishment,
Right.
but he said it should like be used with like the utmost restraint, and he made himself available to all of his officials. And I think he had the largest empire in all of Indian history. So I mean,
Yeah, debate
it's very,
I think Maurya was at least I think the biggest geographical region
yeah,
at that
that's what I
time.
meant. Yep, the largest amount. hmm
Geographically speaking.
hmm
Because like there's three of them that have the biggest regions: Maurya, Gupta, and the Mughals. So these three are kind of like it also depends on like under whose rulership too at the same time. And Ashoka would definitely reach I can see he reached the limits, like the maximum limits of the borders. Um, so I can definitely see Ashoka being like the first ruler of all of like what we would call India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, like the greater India or subcontinent. So I can definitely see that. Um, and yeah, and what you guys present to me is, you know, it um when and it says here when he died, not only you said that Buddhism declined, but also the Mauryan Empire also declines within 50 years. So it was practically he was at the peak at this point, and afterwards there was in 50 years is a very
I
fast
think it was
decline if you ask me.
I suspect
Pushmitra
that a lot of
Shunga. Pushyamitra Shunga was, I think, the one to murder the last Mauryan emperor.
Right.
And let me look up that year real quick.
I
because
suspect that a lot of this also has to do with the fact that, it worked as long as Ashoka or there existed some other strong hand that could unite the empire. But when, that is gone, it
Yeah,
would collapse.
yeah, it's like the strict system, right? Like he had a strict system, but then I think it just didn't have someone to hold it together.
Yeah, it was less that it was a system and more that it was so based upon one person. It's kind of like the Roman Empire could survive emperors dying because
Yeah,
the administration was strong. There existed,
right.
institutions
Yes,
besides
yes.
just the rulership. The same was not the case here.
And even with the Mughals too, like at least for a while, they were able to maintain like their territory even after their decline. There was like it's more of a slower decline and not
Yes.
so much like an immediate decline. Whereas with him, because with the Mughals, it was like at least 100, 200 years, so to speak, was the decline.
It was the combination of, having weak institutions
Yeah.
combined with the fact that the Mauryans hadn't made many friends among the Hindu population.
Yeah, that
That
could
they
also
ruled
be a
over.
big factor. Because keep in mind, Akbar made good friends with the Hindu population, and I think that benefited the Mughals for a long time, for generations,
I
until
mean,
Aurangzeb screwed it up.
yes, but Aurangzeb wasn't close to the sort of brutality that
Yeah,
Ashoka did.
Ashoka. Ooh, yeah. Because considering Aurangzeb, like he sounds normal for his time, if you think about it. Like
Yes,
it's
but
you
I mean, Ashoka did what Aurangzeb did, but times, several times that
Ooh.
in brutality.
But that I don't know about that, because if you think about how many years did Ashoka reign versus how many years Muslim invaders reigned in
No.
India,
Wait a minute. We're talking about Aurangzeb specifically,
Yeah.
not the other rulers. Aurangzeb. We're not
Yeah, but
comparing Muslim rulers, all of them. Aurangzeb and Ashoka we're comparing.
Yes. And I'm saying that Aurangzeb wasn't nearly as destructive as Ashoka was in
Yeah,
pure
because
kill
with
count.
Aurangzeb practically, though with Aurangzeb, I'd kind of make an argument for Aurangzeb because he bankrupted Delhi over the war with the Marathas. So he practically bankrupted those guys, the entire empire. So
Yes.
he was kind of like the catalyst for the decline. But even then, after Aurangzeb, it was a slower decline. Whereas I
Yeah.
see with Ashoka here, it's a faster decline, like within 50 years. It's a lot faster. So I'm guessing like he just did not make enough friends, so to speak, or just had a lot of people hated the Mauryan rulers.
I mean,
So
the thing is that these are also very, different time periods. We are talking
yeah,
about thousands of years between them.
yes. Because again, yeah, Aurangzeb is like Middle Ages. This is like before the Common Era, before Christ too. So this is very
I
like
mean,
this is almost 3 centuries
Aurangzeb is
goes by.
early modern.
Early modern history. Yes, he's not even Middle Ages. Early modern history too. So it's like post like uh, you know almost like pre what do you call it? The pre Marathas and pre what do you call it? Punjab and pre British India, so to speak. So it was almost very close to the modern period. Then we had the Greco-Bactrian conquests in India in 200 BCE. And we had the construction of 30 Buddhist cave shrines at Ajanta, or I've heard of the Ajanta caves, many of which display features of Gupta architecture. So, this is very fascinating. Then in 186 BCE, we have Demetrius. He wins a decisive battle in Gandhara, beginning the Yona or the Greek era of India in 186 BCE. The period of Indo-Greek rule it's sort of like 180 BCE till 80 CE, roughly speaking, roughly. And the Greco-Bactrian king Eucratitus invaded India at 165 CE. So there were more Greek invasions or Greco invasions post Alexander. 160 to 135, the Indo-Greek king Menander rules Punjab. And then we had, sorry guys, the Eucratids flee from Bactria to India. Then the rivalry between the Eucratids and the Oethymenids, I am sorry whoever is cringing at my pronunciations, I apologize heavily. And then this takes place, so there's this weird rivalry between the Indo-Greek kingdoms. Then we have the Parthians in the 80 BCE, with the Siddo-Parthians that also ruled Gandhara. And then in 50 BCE till 600 CE, we have the perfection of wisdom texts written by Mahayana Buddhist sages in India, expounding upon the central vision of Buddha. So later they actually started compiling the texts, which is around 50 BCE.
That's a whole nother. They were compiling texts way before that, right?
Right.
This is the Mahayana sect,
Oh,
like
the Mahayana
immersion of it becoming like a thing, right?
Right. Okay. So other Buddhist texts were being compiled prior to 50 BCE.
Different schools of philosophical thought were being formed.
Yes. Yeah. And then in 30 BCE, we have pepper directly imported by Roman ships from India, and its price decreases. This is interesting. And I also heard that there was Roman trade between India and Rome. So there was trade links. Then there was the first non-stop voyages from Egypt to India from the 1st century CE. And then the Mahayana movement begins in India with its belief in bodhisattva, saintly souls to help the living. Then we have the Kushan rule, which I actually was very fascinated by in the Gandhara region. This was arguably the golden era of the Gandhara civilization, in which architecture, the propagation of the Buddhist religion excelled. And I also learned that the Kushan region had its also like not only had like the Buddhist and Hindu religions, but also like had its own variation of the Greek beliefs too, the Greco beliefs. However, they only borrowed gods like Zeus and Hercules, most popular, where the Heracles were more popular than the other gods. And Hercules is a demigod. So I was very surprised at that.
Well, it's a lot of those gods, a lot of the Roman and Greek gods, you could make direct comparisons to Hindu gods.
Yeah, because it seems like they've influenced all over.
Even
like
a lot of the rituals, even rituals that were done in like Celtic, like druids, like back in the day, or have connections or very like similarities to Hindu rituals.
We have to remember that there does exist a common Indo-European religious,
yeah, of course,
origin of Hinduism and the Indo-European religions in Europe.
Yeah, and there has some common, I would say, ancestor belief system that kind of influenced like the entire regions.
And there was also later contact between them. So
also influences as well from the later contact. There were even the migrants from the Romanis, the migrants from Punjab region of Pakistan that also reside in Europe and Romania and a lot of parts of Europe.
Yeah, my entire, I actually spoke with an Indian guy, and it was way back years, and he said, oh, we have this, extreme religious tradition. You don't have anything due to the fact that, you have Christianity, you believe strange things. I mean, originally we did have religions that were quite similar to Hinduism.
Yeah, and there were like other
And then I got into a
mythologies too.
debate because he thought that Hinduism was entirely unique, but it isn't even one tradition; it's several, and it's
As
obvious that they actually do descend from a common ancestor
and of
of the
course he's one of
Western.
those, like, especially like the modern, like, supremacist, the modern Hindutva supremacist type of mindset that's also like plaguing the Indian populace these days. It's
The
like,
Hindutva,
yeah,
or
it's
whatever they're
It's not
called.
but it's a reaction, right? Nationalism is a reaction to diversity, and they're tired of the minorities getting privileges that they don't have. So I mean, it's a same thing is happening in Europe. It's just a
but
reaction.
keep in mind,
People are tired of
but
it.
keep in
It's
mind, keep in mind,
proactive as well.
it's very
It's not
proactive.
just a reactive. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
just a
very
reaction.
proactive. It is
The
extremely
the,
proactive. You
the
can't deny the
recent
fact that it's discriminatory. It's also very, like, extreme. It's very stupid as well too. It's also very
well,
ignorant.
I'm not sure how much extremism Hindutva or RSS groups have caused in India, but I could lead you to
Oh,
many,
definitely. I have.
recent beheadings that were done, you know.
This isn't one or the other. These both
This
can
is
be
not. Yeah,
proactive and have
yeah.
issues.
It's like, it's a form of whataboutery, right? You can't do whataboutism when there's the one issue that is. So we have this. We have to acknowledge that there are, there is a rise of extremism, especially in Hinduism in India, even though it's
I'm not denying the
relatively
fact that
recent.
a lot of extremism can be reactions
I,
to actually,
Yeah,
extremism from, for example,
I
Islam
think
or
it's
from Christianity.
nationalism. It's not
But
extremism.
I would say it's
nationalism
extremism.
can be extreme
Yeah, it's a
without
weird combination of nationalism and, Hindu extremism too. I
it's
You can
these
deny it
things
all
are
you want.
usually very complicated. It isn't just one thing. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
even if you go as far as talking about now, I'm going to go into a minefield area. But even when you talk about, for example, the Second World War,
Yes.
I mean, Nazism was undeniably racist and actually proactively, destructive. But
Yes. Yes.
there also existed reasons as to its rise in Germany that was due to reactions about everything that
Yeah.
had happened in the First World War.
Yeah. And also, like,
One does
there
not
was this.
exclude the other.
Yeah, and there was scapegoating of certain populations too. So there's a lot of, and with these, they tend to scapegoat certain populations. Sure, there is history, but you can't use that as an excuse to scapegoat certain people. And, you know, it's you can't use that as a discrimination, because again, you are a secular region. You are a secular region. India was never meant to be a Hindu state. It's a secular state. And I'm sorry to say this, India, do not become like Pakistan, please. Do not become the next Pakistan, the Hindu version of Pakistan. Do not do that.
But that doesn't follow. A Hindu Rashtra would be inclusive of minorities like it was pre-invasion days. So, like,
I don't think so. Not
I
really.
mean,
no, it's not in the
Not really.
tenets. The tenets of Hindu Rashtra, Raja Dharma, are much different than the tenets of Islamic Caliphate.
But keep in mind, though, keep in mind, you're still committing the whataboutism fallacy first, and second, like, they're probably not even going to follow that, because with the modern mindset, the today's mindset, it's very discriminatory, and the reactions you've seen in the news, it's a quite worrying situation with India.
I don't
And
think that at all.
there are
The
people in
news
India celebrating the downfall of Pakistan, even though
And
even though
Pakistani
so
children are being taught to hate Hindus from the time that they're born. Like, we can go back and
we were
forth on
not
this
we were not
all
we were not
day.
we were not taught we were not taught to
There's
Hindus.
recent video. I could send you
It's
3
more
videos right
it's more
now.
complex. I grew up in Pakistan. Jen,
No,
I
I
grew up in Pakistan.
understand. In the
I'm a
current
Pakistani.
day,
Seriously, this
I get
doesn't
it. I
even
get it.
matter. So sorry.
It doesn't even
Even
matter. Even if children in Pakistan are taught, even same situation in India. I have Indian friends saying the same thing. We're taught to hate Pakistanis when we're born too. So, Jen, what you're doing is you're doing a lot of whataboutism. It's a lot of
yeah,
whataboutism.
no. Let me explain what the issue here. The issue here isn't that Pakistan is doing this, or that there hasn't been a lot of persecutions under Islamic rulership. But the fact of the matter is that there has been persecution and less tolerant periods also in Indian history against Buddhists, for example, or other issues where, for example, Christian missionaries have been killed or the like.
Christian missionaries have caused destruction in India. Like, they've caused so much problems down there. They're just colonizing forces, right? So, like, okay, so like,
we already know that, but we already know that. We're not saying we don't know that. We're not denying that happened.
We are not denying that.
What we're saying that there are also, we cannot also deny the crimes of Hinduism or Hindu persons in a majority. That's what it is. That's what we're saying. So we cannot deny these things.
Yeah, if people are killing people, it's wrong on both sides, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think that I just believe that countries have the right to resist colonization. It's human instinct, and it's human condition.
Yeah.
Nobody they've opened up their arms and have taken it from colonizers for 700 plus years. I think people have the right to resist that, just like in the UK and European countries.
Nobody in India in history, nobody accepted colonizers with open hands. There were armed conflicts. There was a lot of, and history's not like there's this present, oh, we let them stay. No, there were battles, there were conflicts, there were armed, what do you call it?
Yeah, 100%. Marathas fought Mughals for generations, but they've had a bloody past.
But also, if a missionary comes, for example, in modern times and just wants to go there to spread his Christianity, I'm not a Christian, I'm an atheist. But if a Christian comes and wants to spread his faith and preaches, and then gets attacked, sorry, you might call it colonialism, but when he does things that aren't even, forbidden according to law, and he gets attacked and almost killed, then sorry, the issue isn't, colonialism. The issue here is that he gets attacked due to intolerance.
So when Christian missionaries come there and they set up hospitals and tell people that the only way they'd be treated is if they convert, or when they bribe poor people in villages with rice and food and basically starve them out until they convert, or they bribe women with dowry packages.
They offer incentives. The alternative is that they don't do that.
So,
and
so die if you don't convert.
And
that's the same.
They didn't cause the suffering. They didn't cause the famine. They just said, "Hey, we can help you if you join our club." It doesn't mean that it is not the same thing as coming and imposing something upon you directly by force. Sure, I don't think it's
it's right. We're not. It's not the right thing to do. But yeah, it
isn't the same as doing colonialism. It's just coming there and preaching and saying, "Hey, come into our community and we will welcome you and we will aid you."
It's kind of like this. A very.
Oh no! Now she jumped. Sorry.
I'm okay.
Was I too
It's
harsh?
fine. It's fine. You are being reasonable. I'm sorry. You're being reasonable. I just like what do you call it? I'm not. It's. I think she got disconnected. Welcome back, Jen.
Yeah, sorry, I hit the back button by accident.
Oh no, no, no,
sorry.
no. That's
We
okay.
thought we had scared you away. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
No, no, no,
Usually
no.
I
It's
try to
all
be.
good. I know I
But
have a lot of like. Yes, I guess I could have national like. I'm sympathetic to nationalists. I'm sorry, like I am, and yeah, I just think that countries have the right to you know, be as inclusive or exclusive as they wish.
But
Other
personally,
countries get to do it at others' perils all the time, but when other people do it, it's like a huge problem.
but
So I think
even then, this is a big excuse for nationalism. Hey, they get to do it. Why don't we? Sort of. It's any
it's not even
nationalism.
that in this case. What
Yeah.
it's in the case is that if the law of India has even allowed many of these Christian missionaries to be there, then you can't, really excuse
but
private
the law
citizens
wasn't
going in.
made by them. These are British leftover laws. This is what
And
like
they had
a lot
and
of
they
these
had
laws, like the Sharia leftover law, is all by the British that left there. Like
no, the
they,
Sharia left. Hey, keep in mind though, they weren't necessarily Sharia laws that were left there, because none of the Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi, Maliki laws are applied in modern India. I'm sorry,
but
most
Muslim
of the
men still get
Hanafi.
to marry for women in
Yeah, but
India.
these are exceptions, because again, these are from the British Empire, and India had every chance
Right.
to repel these. Having a parliamentary system, you should have had the right to vote these away and discuss these in parliament. India had 70 years to do this, and now they're
Well,
using this an
they're still
excuse.
trying to do it. They've been trying to do it the entire time, but when they have things like partition happening where
No.
thousands
I'm
of
talking
people are
post
dying,
partition. I'm talking
n-
post partition. They had every chance to repel so many of these things.
these
They
things are
didn't.
still in court till this day. They're
Yeah,
still fighting
Yes,
this
because
stuff.
yeah. So
but
they
they haven't
are.
gotten the political clout in order to, unite enough party and get enough votes to actually change these laws.
So it's a complex system. So you can't just say, oh, because we have these British leftover laws and we're just reacting. It's kind of like this, what do you call it? It's kind of like now you're just playing victim at this point. You're playing victim just to be the bully, practically.
Don't be that accusatory. We just take her at face value here. But what I say more is that the thing is, when you see only yourself, see only this side as being reactionary, if due to others acting, you also make the mistake of thinking that you kind of reduce the agency of the Hindu tradition.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, back to the I think we diverted a lot. So I think
Oh
we
yeah,
have 10, 13 minutes left. How much do we have? I think we don't have a lot. So we'll actually briefly cover these periods. So yeah, we were at the Kushans, then the Gupta period, your favorite period, Jinni, the Gupta period at
yeah,
320
the Gupta.
CE. So it's considered like the golden age of ancient India in art and architecture. Gupta the first, he founds the Gupta Empire in northern India. This is another Chandragupta. This is Chandragupta the second of northern India. So there's two Chandraguptas. So this is of the Gupta. That one was of the Chandragupta Maurya, of the previous one. That's why I think it's so easy to confuse the two rulers. Though this is from 380 to 415 CE, so 35 years. And India is invaded around 450 by the White Huns across the Hindu Kush. And also, White Huns, when they say White Huns, they don't necessarily mean white in terms of like skin color or whatever they had. There was a sash that they used to wear, the White Huns. It was white, like a white cloth that they wore. So that's what they were recognized as. So that's where they got the name from.
The Hephthalites, yes.
Yes, the Hephthalites, and I think they also had conflicts with the Persians, the Sasanians as
Yes,
well too.
they had, but they actually managed to get pretty far, but were then repelled.
Yeah, they were I think repelled by Khosrow, I believe, or his father or grandfather or something like that. So I don't recall. We'll have to look into it. Then we have the reign of the White Han king Tormana, son of Tunjana, and then a life of Ajita Kesak Akambali, the prominent member of the Charvaka school. Then we have from 500 to 600. So this is around the time when I think we're getting to like the more rise of like around parallel to like pre-Islamic Arabia and during Muhammad's lifetime. In India, the Tantric expands the number of deities to include the helpful demons contactable through ritual. Well, apparently, this actually ritual still exists. Apparently, where you have like helpful demons. So, um, quite laughable actually. Reign of the king Maharakula of the White Huns in Gandhara. Then we also have the Chalukya ruler of Pulakiskin. Pulakasin. I apologize. Uh, you know, okay, ruler of Pulakiskin the first. Okay. Then we have the end of the reign of Vishnu Gupta Chandradatya in 550 to 550. So this is the last of the Gupta rulers. So when the Guptas are done, we have the Maurya dynasty, which flourishes in northern India. But it's not very long. From 50, it's very short-lived because its reign. Then it has Chalukya. Then you have the second. So then you have Harsha, which fights and gets defeated by the Pulakasin, and the reign of Chalukya ruler of Vikramaditya. So they're also called the Cholas as well. So this is where their reign comes. So 681 CE is where a lot of these things happen. Then we finally have the arrival of Muhammad bin Qasim coming to northern India. And we'll actually cover him in greater detail. And Muhammad bin Qasim, what do you call it, came from Sindh actually, and then uh, it was quite like a quite a bit of a few campaigns that is, and this was under the Umayyads, so to speak. So the first time you have contact with India, like in a direct confrontation, is under the Umayyad region, and this is like before, like this was during the downfall. I think this is Walid the First was caliph during this time. So this is where we have Muhammad bin Qasim's campaign. We'll go into more detail, and it's a very interesting campaign.
Hello,
Then we have
everyone.
yo. How are you, Nick?
Doing well. So, how was the presentation?
It's good so far.
Hi,
We actually
Nick.
finished yours, and then we are now almost at Muhammad bin Qasim now at the timeline. So we
Ah,
might even cover Muhammad bin Qasim in the future because we'll do like post-Islamic India as well too. So
yeah, no, I was thinking like if you're looking at the Chandraguptas and everything, I
yeah,
was going to do like a full-on presentation on the Indo-Greeks, the Greco-Bactrians
yeah,
had the King Melinda. He
yeah.
actually had like an interesting Buddhist background. That wa- so in Afghanistan you'll find like a Greco Indian architecture for temples of Buddha.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And there were some statues in parts of Afghanistan as well as Peshawar that were found in NWFP. It's also called modern day the province. Shit, what's the name of? I keep forgetting. I'm so used to Northwestern Frontier Province. Um, it's called crap.
Because
Khyber
if you're look,
Pakhtunkhwa, Khyber, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Yes, KPK, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So that's where we also found like some remnants of the old civilizations from there too.
yeah. Oh, and did you guys cover the stuff with like the Gandhara region, which is really interesting because
Yes,
that's
yes,
current day,
we actually covered quite a bit of the Gandhara region. We actually
because
covered.
that's modern day Kandahar, and that's like the earliest cradle of.
Yeah.
So
We were even discussing Ashoka as well too, and we had like this comparison between how messed up Ashoka was, and then you can't compare him to like someone like Aurangzeb, for example, because you can kind of make a case for either or.
I mean,
And
like with Ashoka, he had his war with Kalinga, which was bloody. And the thing is,
yeah,
he went
Yes.
from being a general style. He went from being a general to an administrator, essentially. So instead of like in ancient India, as a kshatriya, you had two different roles. Either you were an administrator, like a minister, or you were a general of an army. Now, kings took either or, depending on what their physical caliber were. And he went from basically being a general to taking more of a ministerial role. So he was
yeah,
still like he still did his kingly duties of passing laws and everything, but he just went from like being a warlord to more of a
yeah.
guy that sat at throne.
And we were discussing how like there was a very fast decline of the Mauryans after him, 50 years,
Oh yeah,
because I think he made a lot of enemies. He had made a lot of enemies, especially, I
or
think Jen
more
and
so,
Ginny.
I think he was more of a administrator in terms of like he was able to negotiate and hold people against it because of his militaristic background. He
Yeah,
kind of knew how to control enemies to his will. Like with King Melinda, he basically was like, "Hey, what do you want? You know, I just messed up Kalinga over here. What do you want for that not to happen to you? 500 war elephants here, take them and fuck off."
I think,
Kind
yeah,
of
that
thing.
was
And that kind of like,
Chandragupta's negotiation with the Seleucids was also like 500 war elephants, because the
yeah,
Seleucids, and that was maintained the peace between the Seleucids and the Mauryas, so to speak, the Chandragupta Mauryas. So, and elephants were fucking expensive though, and they're not cheap.
oh
Elephants
yeah,
are friggin' expensive.
Yes.
So I think Ginny, also viewers, do check out Ginny's video on war elephants.
yeah,
So it's a very interesting video that he does on the war elephants. And oh yeah, also we also covered like Alexander. We also covered like we were actually at the Cholas, and then the reign of the Chalukya. Then we had the what do you call it? Muhammad bin Qasim just entered the fray. So we've kind of
yeah.
entered like
And
the
I think we're
Islamic.
at like a 2 hour mark for that as well
Yeah,
because
so we
like
can kind of end it.
starting from Alexander actually, because I have a lot of work
Yeah,
um to do with a lot of presentation material on Alexander himself.
right, right. So yeah, we can definitely wrap it up here. We can definitely wrap it up here. Um,
Oh, and
uh,
and Culture Jenny, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
I felt kind of like
Is there
I
any
can
closing?
contribute so much since I don't know that much of history. I had to, remember what I had been taught years ago
Yeah,
and what I've heard from some seminars.
and it's definitely an interesting history that was covered. But yeah, Jen, final words, like just to wrap things up.
No, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure
No
coming on.
problem. No problem. And yeah, Nick, final words.
I hope Moose wasn't pissing you off with too much of the Islamic stuff there, Jen. I know we were gonna do
Yeah.
But we'll have to have a separate show on all that
Yeah.
Hindutva and whatever. That would
Yeah.
be a good one.
And
yeah.
yeah, Culture Ginny, thank you so much for being here. But
Yeah, let's
yeah,
meet up on Discord as
yeah,
well
yeah,
after
yeah,
this because I want to
absolutely.
because like what happened was one of my friends he got into a car accident yesterday because of
Yeah.
the snowstorm we're having here, so I had to like go visit him before they jumped him out.
I nearly crashed, boy, after I dropped you. I nearly crashed
Oh
three
yeah,
times. I dropped you yesterday. I dropped your ass yesterday, and then I nearly crashed. So got home at like 4 or 6
wait.
a.m. in the morning.
Oh yeah, no. When you said crashed, I thought you were talking about that lady in the red jacket. I thought like You should have just like, oops, sorry, here's the accelerator, and just ran her over. What the fuck was she doing?
No,
Like,
I'm not running over some ladies in red jackets or even red saris for that matter.
I mean, what the fuck was she doing, jumping out in the middle? Fuck it, like,
Yeah,
in the middle of a goddamn fucking snowstorm. She jumps out in front of a car. Is like, yo, fucking stop! It's like I can't even if I try.
yeah,
Dumbass.
it's so weird. There were some
Alright.
also some guys like were stuck, so it's just like, you know. But anyway, thank you guys so much. We'll meet you at Discord. I'm ending the broadcast. Have a nice evening, everybody.
All right.